Hi, glad to see you on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to me. Have a good view. The special commando operations led by Lord Mountbatten were supposed to be a real pain in the ass for the Germans and a hope of liberation for the French remaining under occupation. The idea was sound, the executors, brave, but with the realization of the plans were invariably problems. March 27, 1942. British commandos in the evening approached the port of Saint-Nazaire in boats. Ahead of them awaited death and glory. The Limping Chariot, March 27, 1942, 23:30-35. Wheatley and 27 Wellingtons of the Royal Air Force began a raid on the port. The plan of the commander of the diversionary force, Commander Robert E.D. Ryder, was to drown out the noise of the engines of the motor launch, small boats coming up the river. However, due to low cloud cover, the planes were unable to bomb on target. Only 4 of them hit the city, while another 6 dropped bombs on alternate targets. Suspecting something amiss, the commander of the German 22nd Marine Regiment of Anti-Aircraft Artillery, Corvette Captain Karl Conrad Mecke, at Iwulandiran on March 28th, ordered increased vigilance and then gave the order to cease firing and extinguish searchlights. Ryder later noted in his report that at 00:30, when he was 12 miles from his target, despite the continued raid, the German anti-aircraft artillery ceased firing. The North Shore showed itself at 00:45, whereupon the lead destroyer HMS Campbelltown lay on a course of 5D towards the Lemorus Lighthouse Tower. Following this course through the banks and shoals of the Loire estuary, the destroyer several times touched the ground bottom. The British, unnoticed, reached the tower, which passed at 1:22. From here to the target was only 2 miles, but then on both sides of the river turned on the searchlights. The operator of the radar in St. Mark at 01:15 noticed from the shore 17 unidentified ships moving along the fairway, but some time was taken to find out in the Port Defense Headquarters that their ships are not expected. Only then at 01:20, Mecca ordered preparations to repel the landing force. Already after the flotilla was illuminated by searchlights, for almost 5 minutes, only a few shots were fired. The British successfully moron artillerymen coastal batteries, vigorously talking in German. The success of the bluff was greatly aided by the altered silhouette of Campbelltown and German flags on the ships. It was not until 01:28 that artillery from both banks of the Loire struck the landing flotilla, which was only a mile from the dock. Realizing that the bluff was over, Ryder ordered all ships to return fire. The Campbelltown and gunboats lowered German and raised British flags. Despite the heavy fire, the ships continued to move to the target. They had already left the sectors of fire of the most powerful batteries, and those that fired on the destroyer could not seriously damage it. Right on the course of the lead artillery motor gunboat, MCB 314, was an air defense ship, in reality, Minebreaker 137. Sperbertier, X-ship Botila Russ, which opened fire from 20mm machine guns. It was immediately suppressed from 300 meters with fire from pom-pom, after which the ship was successively fired at by all passing British. After passing the old breakwater, MGB 314 turned to the right, making way to the dock-speeding Campbelltown. At this time, ML 160 suppressed the fire of anti-aircraft guns on the right side of the Campbelltown. At 01:34, the destroyer, having broken through the anti-torpedo net, rammed the dock gate at 19 knots. The commandos on it immediately landed on the shore and rushed to destroy the intended objects. Simultaneously rushed to the shore and boats with the landing party. The lead boat in the right column, ML 192, was hit by a large shell before the Campbelltown rammed the caisson. The boat lost control and hit the wall at the east wharf. Its commander, Lt. William L. Stevens, ordered the ship abandoned. The landing craft found the enemy positions they were to suppress empty. The second and third gunboats, ML 262 and ML 267, avoiding collision with the flagship, dodged away from the landing site and went for a second run. The fourth ML 268 was heading straight for the landing site, but on approach was shot from shore and exploded. Half the crew and 16 of the 18 commandos were killed. The fifth ML-156 in the column also came under fire, lost control, and went downstream with one engine running. The ML-177, closest in the column, successfully landed its commandos on the south side of the old harbor entrance. On the second attempt, ML-262 landed his party at the old entrance. But then the Campbelltown bombers blew up the pumping station and technical building, and the boat took back both his commandos and the destroyer bombers. ML-262 then began to withdraw, taking several hits in the process, with casualties on board. ML-267, while attempting to reapproach the shore, was set on fire and left drifting downstream. Her crew and landing party suffered heavy casualties. At this time, MGB-314 landed near the south gate of the dock. The landing party commander, Lieutenant Cole, Augustus C. Newman, and his staff, who hurried to join their men ashore. Ryder then ordered ML-177 in a horn to approach the stern of the destroyer and remove the crew and wounded. The commander himself went to the north side of the old entrance and took aboard MGB-314, another 20-30 sailors from Campbelltown. Here he was joined by MTV-74. Ryder was going to order MTV-74 to torpedo the destroyer if it did not sink at the dock gate. He went ashore and inspected the Campbelltown from the side of the dock. Ryder found that there was no one left aboard the destroyer, made sure that the 4 sinking charges had worked, and returned to his flagship. The destroyer was lying in the right place. Sub-Lieutenant Robert C.M.V. Wynn, commander of the torpedo boat, was ordered to pick up the remaining sailors from the destroyer, torpedo the sluice gates of the old entrance, and depart on his own. It was at this time that a group of Campbelltown bombers blew up a building with gate-locking mechanisms at the old entrance, near where MGB-314 was docked, followed by a pumping station and another technical structure. Meanwhile, Wynn, following Ryder's orders, turned around and fired 2 torpedoes with delayed action fuses into the outer gate of the old entrance airlock. Both torpedoes hit the gate and lay low. The MTV-74 then took 6 men off the stern of the Campbelltown and departed downriver. The capture of the old breakwater failed completely. The lead ML-447 in the left column, with 15 commandos aboard, sped past the landing site under fire, and in a second attempt to approach the shore received a shell in the engine room, caught fire, and had to be abandoned. Some of the commandos and crew were picked up by an ML-160, and the rest reached shore. The ML-457 that followed safely landed 27 fighters. The commanders of the others, ML-307, ML-443, ML-306, and ML-446, did not land the landing party and began to withdraw as all approaches were lighted and shot at. A little later, the reserve ML-298 also left after them. Thus, the old breakwater remained in the hands of the Germans, and the possibility of evacuating the landed commandos was reduced to 0. The boat's retreat to the open sea turned into a rout. ML-262, departing from the old entrance at the old breakwater, came across the burning ML-457, which had just landed its commandos, and approached to render assistance. The closed boats on the lighted surface of the water presented an excellent target and were killed by artillery fire. ML-270, ML-160, and ML-298 in the middle of the river came under accurate fire from shore batteries. On the former, a direct hit damaged the steering gear, and the boat moved upstream for repairs. ML-160 took 3 hits, but despite the damage, made it through to sea. ML-298, which was lit up by fuel burning near the side, also proved a perfect target for the German gunners and quickly went to the bottom. ML-177 almost made it to sea, but was sunk by a hit from a 75mm shell from a battery at Le Pointeau. MTV-74 was also unlucky. Moving at full speed, the boat ran into a life raft with 2 men in the middle of the river. Wynn ordered them picked up and slowed down. The shore battery opened fire. After receiving 2 hits, the boat sank, killing 33 of the 36 men on board. Wynn himself was among the survivors. The Germans fished him out of the water and sent him to a camp. ML-160, ML-307, and ML-443, having failed to wait until tenor to meet the destroyers, headed for Great Britain on their own. After repelling 2 single German aircraft attacks, They reached their shores safely the next day. Unlucky was ML-306, which was intercepted by German ships. The commander of the 5th Flotilla corvette, Captain Moritz Schmidt, only at 03:15, received the first notification of the attack on Saint Nazaire and led his destroyers there at top speed. It was still dark when at 05:30 the Germans spotted ML-306. The destroyer Jaguar attempted to capture it, but succeeded only after a 45-minute battle, when the British ran out of ammunition and 20 of the 26 men on the boat were killed or wounded. Seeing that MTV-74 had torpedoed the outer gate of the old entrance, Ryder decided to see how the attack on the old breakwater was going. Already moving away from the old entrance, he saw that the floodlighted MLs were under murderous fire. In an attempt to help them, MGB-314 stopped 100 meters from the old entrance and began firing pom-pom fire at the rooftops of the adjacent buildings. The return fire from the anti-aircraft guns was sparse and inaccurate at first, but then thickened. The gunboat dropped a smoke bomb, and under cover of the veil, Ryder held an emergency meeting. There was no evacuation signal from shore, and no communication with shore at all, and the paratroopers would have to wait at least another half hour for their approach to the loading points. Return of MGB-314 to the old entrance with 30-40 people on board, including seriously wounded, under fire from both coasts, was not possible either. Therefore, at 2:50, Ryder began to withdraw at high speed. On the traverse of the South Breakwater, he was joined by one of the surviving MLs, which Ryder covered with smoke. Both retreating boats were illuminated by searchlights and fired upon from both sides of the river. When passing the Lemoore Tower, the shore artillery joined in the shelling, but only at Le Chatelier Bank, 4 miles from the shore. Shrapnel from a shell exploding nearby killed the gunner of the pom-pom. When the British thought they had already escaped the searchlights, they suddenly ran into a German armed trawler. Fortunately, it did not do any serious damage with its fire. 10 minutes later, MGB-314 met ML-270. Although the latter was not steering well, she was still making 15 knots, and Ryder joined her. At 04:30, the rendezvous point with the destroyers was passed. They were not in place, and Ryder decided to move independently to the English coast. As it began to get light, Ryder reduced speed to 8 knots, and the ML-270 pulled away 3 miles. Visibility improved, and another ML appeared astern. Ryder headed toward it. A few minutes later, the long-awaited destroyers, HMS Atherstone and HMS Tynedal, appeared on the horizon. At 06:30, they had a 10-minute fear contact with 4 German destroyers of the 5th Flotilla rushing towards Saint Nazaire, in which the Tynedal took 2 hits. The Germans did not pursue the enemy, and the British continued patrolling, waiting for the return of the boats. On board MGB-314 were about 24 wounded. All of them were transferred to the Atherstone. The gunboat had a breach in the starboard side near the forepeak, but it appeared that the water intake was under control. As soon as the wounded were transferred, Ryder on MGB-314, as well as ML-270, ML-446, and ML-156 moved on, with MGB-314 in tow from the Atherstone. 4 crewmen and volunteers from the destroyer remained on the boat. At 09:06, the escort destroyers, HMS Cleveland and HMS Brocklesby, assigned to cover the returning gunboats, approached it, and the commander of the Cleveland, Kimder Guy B. Sayer, as senior officer, took command over the entire formation. By this time, although British planes were already patrolling over the ships, Luftwaffe pilots began to show interest in the destroyers and gunboats. Air battles began. Fearing stronger raids, the British sank the MGB-314, which because of the continued flow of water broke off the towing end. People from him removed ML-156. Then, the deteriorating weather added to the threat from the air. As all 3 remaining boats had damage, Commander Sayer decided to sink them as well, taking the crews and commandos to the destroyers. The head of Plymouth Command, Admiral Sir Charles M. Forbes, later criticized this decision. The destroyers arrived safely in England on March 29th. Remaining on the French shore, commandos led by Lieutenant Colonel Newman under enemy fire managed to break through to the new part of Saint Nazaire, but by dawn they were surrounded and about 10 weeds on March 28th, after the exhaustion of ammunition surrendered. Only 5 commandos escaped capture and managed to reach Spanish territory. It seemed that the coastal defense of Saint Nazaire had won, but at 11:45 Berlin time on March 28th, an explosive device went off on the Campbelltown. The dock caisson was completely destroyed. Just then, a group of high-ranking officers and technicians were inspecting the destroyer. Near the ship was also a lot of curious people, mostly shipyard workers. In the end, the number of deaths in the explosion amounted to 360 people. A total of 67 Germans were killed in the battle in the harbor and the explosion of the Campbelltown. Another 136 were wounded. The tankers, Schledstadt and Passat, standing in the dock, were seriously damaged. The next day, workers from the tow organization were sent to clear the port of debris and wreckage. The work was in full swing when at 4:30 p.m. on March 30th, MTV-74 torpedoes exploded at the outer gate of the old entrance. The workers began to flee in panic, but their khaki overalls were mistaken by German soldiers for commando uniforms and fired on them. Several workers were killed, and some townspeople who were caught up in the commando raid were also killed. British naval losses during Operation Chariot and killed and missing totaled 34 officers and 157 lower ranks out of 62 officers and 291 lower ranks involved in the operation. Only 4 of the 18 gunboats returned to England. The commandos lost 34 officers and 178 privates out of the 44 officers and 224 privates involved. 219 British servicemen were taken prisoner. On MGB 314, 2 crew members were killed in the operation. One of them, gunner Pom Pom William A. Savage, was one of 5 awarded the Victoria Cross.